Hey Pete, Jason here. One alibi. When I was listening and you were going through the classes, you mentioned Space Marshal or Colonial Marshal, and that reminded me of a film I have very fond memories of, Outland. I believe Outland's the name of it, where Sean Connery's the cop in space at a mining colony. I need to revisit that movie. I haven't seen it for years, but so it might not stand up, when viewed today, but I remember that being a fun movie. So I need to revisit that. Anyhow, just thought I'd mention that. I'm sure you've seen Outland, but talk to you later. Would Aliens be a good system for Outland? What system would you use if you were going to play that game? Or, play that movie as a game? Take care.
That was Jason from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Yeah, Outland. Now there's a blast from the past. Didn't really hit off big, that film. People seem to forget that Sean Connery's career at that point was a bit in the doldrums. He'd had, after leaving his role as James Bond, he'd done a few other roles, a lot supporting. Nothing major had hit off. He was obviously in The Bridge Too Far as a supporting role. And this was a shot at a big role again. And a lot of the criticism for the film came, critics seem to think that it was a remake of High Noon in Space. And while, yes, it does have some similarities, it is a bit of a westerny feel, it is its own film. It's a very good film. It's some years since I've checked it out. But I think I might go and check that one out again because it's a while since I've seen it. Oh, and I've got another call in from Jason, so let's see what else he's got to say.
Hey Pete, Jason here, Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Enjoyed your review of the Aliens RPG. It sounds like it's a little bit lacking. It sounds like you're maybe a little disappointed in the physical materials and some other things. I'll pick it up on PDF, definitely. I like Aliens that much. I probably won't bother buying a physical copy from the sound of it. I've got enough other things that can cover what it offers physically. But I am curious to read over the rules. Anyhow, also, thank you so much for those GM tips for NPCs. I will make use of those in the future. I think that's some great advice, and I appreciate it. And I know that was directed to everybody, not just to me. I'm not, big-headed or anything. I just want to let you know that is great advice, and I'm going to try to use those in the future. So, take care. Bye.
Yeah, it's the Aliens role-playing game. I didn't mean to be negative on the game. I think the core rules are a good set of rules. I was just a little bit disappointed with the quality of the dice and the counters, and I think that may have tarnished the rest of my review of the game. The rules are solid. If you've played Forbidden Lands, Mutant Year Zero, you know exactly what you're expecting, and they've also got lots of splat books planned as well. I've not managed to play the game as yet. A few of my colleagues at our local gaming club, they've played it and highly recommend it. So I think before I pass judgment on it anymore, I think I need to get down and organise me a game and see how it plays out. With the dice mechanic though, it's going to be a bit more difficult to run online, I think, with the stress dice and the base dice. The base dice is alright, it's successes. I think you'd have to look at a macro for sorting out the stress dice. But hey, there we go. And as for the NPC advice, I'm glad it's of use to you, Jason. I'm always taking tips from wherever I can, and if I've got any tips I can pass on, then I certainly will do that. Thanks for the call in, Jason. Much appreciated. Before we get into the main topic for today's episode, I'm first going to talk about a couple of games I've run and been involved with. First off, I've joined Dave Aldridge's Black Hack. Played the first game on Friday night. Great bunch of players in that one. Dave is running this procedurally, so he's doing some random dice rolls to decide where we go and events that are happening. And other people have talked about it on their podcast. So I won't go into too much detail about it, but you can check out the likes of Jason Connolly and Joe Richter have talked about it on their podcasts. But yes, we ended up wandering around in circles, but it was a great game, and looking forward to playing some more tomorrow night. On Thursday night, I ran my Lamentations of the Flame Princess campaign, and we had our first character death. A crab spider dropped out of the rafters of a crypt on top of Mark Mitchell, who's one of my players in our face-to-face group. One bite and he was dead. Brought it all home to the other players. Some of the it's the first death we've had in this campaign, and some of the players have not experienced a PC death in RPGs for a while, so it was a bit of a shock to them. They were all scrambling around trying to find ways to save Mark's character Merlin, but to no avail. I spoke to Mark after, and he was quite all right about everything. He said if there's no risk of character death, then why are we playing? So yeah, that's I think that's going to definitely move the story forward. This is Future Pete Jones here, just listening back to this episode. I just want to give Mark Mitchell a shout out. He's written a novel called Moonlight, The Game of Gods. It's up on Amazon. So if you fancy a fantasy novel writ in the modern day with a little bit of strangeness about it, then please check out Mark's novel. He would much appreciate it. Thanks very much. So for today's topic, I'm going to talk about tokens for your gaming, miniatures, and all that good stuff. So when running a game, of course you can run Theatre of the Mind, and if you are running Theatre of the Mind, then normally you don't use any maps whatsoever. Sometimes you might need a whiteboard just to plot things out, maybe a shape of the room, but normally you don't use tokens, and it's all played within the mind and characters visualise it. But I quite like to play my face-to-face games with tokens, and I do a mixture of Theatre of the Mind and battle maps. So with battle maps, you've got several options. If, like me, you've got lots of pre-painted miniatures or miniatures you painted yourself, then you can dig those out. And I've got lots of science fiction and fantasy figures that I can sort of dish out and put on the tabletop. Downside of that is the time painting them, and I guess as a wargamer, I have got lots of unpainted lead lying around. So that is often a bar to people using miniatures. Of course, you can buy pre-painted miniatures off eBay that someone else has painted, but with those, you often find that it's a bit hit and miss. Sometimes the pictures look great and they come in the crap, and other times you get really good figures. Another alternative is to use pre-painted MDF flat miniatures. And I've used some from Flat Pack Forces, and on my blog I've posted some pictures of those miniatures. They are MDF, you pop them out, slot them in the base, and they're ready to go, and they're all pre-printed. Nice and cheap, they're about £5 for 8 figures. They do a nice variety of fantasy stuff, goblins and heroes. So that's a good alternative. And the other thing you can use on the tabletop as well is you can print your own. There's lots of companies on Drive-Thru RPG doing paper minis. They come in a PDF, you print them out on the colour printer, and hey presto, you've got a figure. There's a little bit more work with those. You've got to put them on paper or card, and some printers don't take the card, so you find that you have to print them on paper and laminate them. Then you've got to cut them out, so a little bit more work. Moving on from minis, the next idea is to use tokens, and the simplest way you can do that is just with coloured tiddlywink counters. So you could use those, nice and simple. Or you can go a little bit more upmarket. Questing Beast, Ben Milton, has got a nice video on YouTube where he uses magic cards. He gets some old magic cards, uses a hole punch, and it's a hole punch with a 1 inch or 1.5 inch diameter. Put it on the card, punch it out, and you can do one or two things. You can either stick it on a wooden base, and I've used it for MDF bases that I use for figures. You can get those in various sizes from 5mm up to about 40mm, and pick the size, stick it on one side of that, and you've got a bunch of tokens. And I will put some pictures on the blog to accompany this podcast to show you some of the things I've done with these tokens and give you some ideas, visual representation. The tokens I use are the size of poker chips. So I think they're about 30-ish mil, something like that. And then I've got a poker case where I keep all the tokens in. So I've got NPCs, I've got monsters, a whole variety of things, so I can just pop them out. Another alternative with the tokens is you can get some resin domes. These are for crafting and they're designed for people who collect bottle tops for bottles. And if you print out the token, so 1-inch token, get these domes, you can just stick them straight on the token, and then you've got a nice simple token, clear through, and it gives it a bit of protection. And I've got some of those as well, and I'll put some of those pictures on the blog. And the final alternative, which I've recently started using as well, is some coin holders. Now, these plastic coin holders are designed for people who collect coins, and they're basically circular, transparent, and the holder is about the depth of a pound coin or a little bit more, and it's in 2 halves. You pull them apart, you put your coin in, put them back together again to hold your coin in a nice condition, and it comes in a little box, and it costs about £8 or £9 for a box of, I think it's about 50 odd. But what you can do is, same as before, you pop out a picture from a magic card or one you've printed out, and you can put them into the coin holder and use those on the table. The beauty of this method is that you can change the contents of the coin holder. So if you're running a sci-fi game, you can put sci-fi tokens in them, and that way you don't need so many of the coin holders. Another way to make tokens if you haven't got magic cards is to use either the token tool from the Map Tools website, or you can use, there's a token tool 2, which is an online version by somebody else. This is Future Pete again. The second piece of software is Token Stamp, not Token Tool 2. And basically, you can grab any image you want, drag it onto the interface in both programs, and resize it, recolor it slightly, and then you put a ring around it, and then save it as a PDF. And then once you've got a number of those saved, JPEG or PNG, I would recommend going for PNG because you lose less quality. And then you can import it into your word processor of choice, put a number of the PNG, JPEG tokens on there, and print out a sheet of them and cut them out. The other beauty of those two tools is you can also use the PNGs as your tokens on your virtual tabletop of choice. And I've used them in my Arc and Forge Master Toolkit, and I've also used them on Roll20 as well. A great way to get your tokens up and running. And providing you're not streaming your game to YouTube or to the public, then there's no harm in using copyrighted material. But I would say if you're doing anything online where you're streaming it, then don't use copyrighted material. You don't want to fall foul of these companies. So there's plenty of ways you can add tokens and miniatures to your games to enhance them. There is a bit of time involved with it, so if you haven't got time, then that's not for you. But there are some simple methods in there which you can use just to enhance your game, and use them if you feel free. So that is some tips and tricks there. I will leave all links in the show notes. One thing I will say about the Black Hat game was it was going to be the first time that we got all 4 of the Purple Worm presenters in the same game together. But unfortunately, John had to dip out late on. He was tired, so it's understandable. So it looks as if for tomorrow night, Wednesday, when we have another session of Black Hack, it looks as if we're going to get all 4 of the Worm presenters together in the same game. So that's going to be a first. If you haven't checked out the Purple Worm podcast yet, then now might be the chance to do it, where you can listen to myself, Dave Aldridge from Deeper Centel, John Allen Large from Red Dice Diaries, and Colin Green from Spike Pit. And the next episodes we've got coming up on the podcast, we've got a discussion on Into the Odd and Electric Bastionland, and we've got an episode on the Black Hack. So if you haven't already, check out the Purple Worm podcast. So thank you for listening to me rambling on, and look forward to another episode shortly. You have been listening to the Dragons Are Real podcast. My name is Pete Jones. You can find more information at my website at petejones.neocities.org or at my blog at dragonsarealpodcast.tumblr.com. The opening music was Fireflies and Stardust by Kevin MacLeod. The closing music, also by Kevin MacLeod, was Fretless